Hey guys, so once again I'm going to try to imitate Messi's dribble technique. So here's him doing it against Boateng in that Champions League game. So I'll just play it quickly. Okay. And there's me trying to imitate. Now, just a bit of a note, I'm actually doing this with my right foot, so I'm just flipping it just to have easier comparison. So let's play it a bit. Alright, so let's get to the point where we take our last touch on the ball before we lunge and move the other direction. Okay, so at this point you can see our right leg. You see Messi's leg, you always see it slants, inwards to outwards in that angle. And I've been trying to imitate that too, so it's more or less the same direction. Now the reason he can do that is, first you need to put, that leg a little bit left than you normally would. And, many players, when they kick the ball, they kind of, just kind of reach out to it. But instead, which is probably what I find he does is, he turns his hips. So as he's about to touch the ball with his left foot, he actually turns his hips in this direction. And every time I've done this, playing against other players, they always, remark, how much flair it has or how deceiving it is. So that's one thing to note. And also, you can notice the way he swings his arms. So you'll see my arms kind of swing this way as I try to get my hips turned, so my hips and my shoulders as well. Let's just see how I swing my arms. So you can see how my arms swing to the side, and I try to get that hip turn. And you can also notice how Messi does it. See, his arms start here, and they'll swing over this direction. And he tries to get that hip turned. It looks fairly subtle when you see it on the screen, but when you do it, you can definitely notice that feeling. And when players play against you, they can definitely be more deceived about where you're going to go. Now, another thing to note is you see Messi's leg. So usually when he touches the ball, usually it's with the outside of his foot. Now, if you look at his leg, it's actually more or less, kind of straight. I find, a lot of times naturally, instead of having it there, players will have like their leg this way. So this has to do with him driving, that knee forward. As he brings that knee forward, he can bend his leg and more or less have it straight on. Many players, might extend their leg, and as a natural movement, they kind of slant their leg out. So that's what I've been trying to do is, really drive that knee forward and get my leg more or less straight on. Okay, so here's a better angle. You can see that knee is pointed forward. It's ahead of, his heel, his foot. So, as he drives his knee forward, he can bend his leg and keep it straight. So just to illustrate that point. Now, notice Messi touches it, with the outside of a foot. Now, when you hit it, it should be more or less the equator of the ball. This is because he, twists his ankle back and more or less in line where he's going. So when you hit it with the equator of the ball, as you fall, it gives you time to actually twist and keep going in this direction. If you were to hit more to the bottom, you wouldn't have enough time to actually twist that ankle and continue right in that direction. So let's see how he twists his foot. There's the touch, then now it's turning, and then now it's more or less straight on. So I try to do the same thing here. Touch the equator of the ball, and then trying to turn my ankle. You don't see it, but it was more or less this way. So after he's touched the ball, you'll see Messi. He'll extend that right leg out as the lunge, drop that shoulder, and also before he moves on to this direction. So there's a couple things to note here. So actually, move begins when he starts there. It's actually most of the power, I'd say about 70%, maybe even 80% of his forward momentum comes from initially that right leg. His left foot just kind of grazes the ball. It's not really doesn't really spring forward as you normally would intuitively do, but you know, he just uses that momentum initially from the right leg. So another thing you'll notice is as he plants, you know, his foot's maybe a foot and a half away from the ball. So this is kind of important because as soon as the lunge happens, he wants to, you know, explode to the other side. So, you know, he doesn't want his leg, you know, out over here, and he also wants to put it in a straight line. You know, he doesn't want to, like, you know, curve his leg this way because, you know, that takes some extra time before you actually move to the side. So, you know, once this happened, the defender sees, oh, he tricked me. You don't want to give him enough time to react, so you want to have as short of a distance as possible, as direct as possible. So in this clip, I actually my foot movement isn't really that as ideal, so I'll just go here. So at this point, you see Messi's leg and my leg. So ideally, my foot should be more here, and then I can move in this direction. But you can kind of see it's more of like a semicircle motion, whereas Messi's is straight on. Now, what I find the reason is, you kind of notice in my right arm, it's extended up to the side. If you see Messi's, it's usually around his hip. So, you know, a lot of times, I'll play another clip later of me correcting myself, but I find it's good to, you know, take that, you know, in this case, Messi's right hand, put it on his right hip, and that kind of forces this actually good left foot position. So, now the reason for this is, you know, as he makes the lunge out here, you know, he doesn't want to, like, you know, put his arm out because naturally, you know, you want to, you know, explode this way. So naturally, your left foot would have like a lot of like momentum to the left, and you have to correct it. And then as you try to move forward, it comes in a semicircle. So by putting, you know, his right hand on his right hip, you know, he does a lunge, but doesn't have too much, you know, moment, like whole body momentum this way. So that way he can just move directly to the ball. Meanwhile, you know, like, you know, I'm really, you know, seeing compared to Messi, really like jumping over to the side here, and that gives my leg too much momentum over here. So as I try to go there, I'll have to move in a semicircle. Alright, so in this clip I want to show me doing it, but actually putting, you know, my hand to the side. So I mentioned before, you know, doing so, you know, gives you like good efficient left foot distance to the ball, so it's ideally not too far, and you can have a more direct motion towards it. And also makes your shoulder drop easier. So, you know, if your arm's extended out to the side, you know, it's a bit it takes a bit more effort to get that shoulder down. So if, you know, your hand's down, naturally it's easy just to get that shoulder down as well. Now, just a little thing to note, you know, Messi, he doesn't always drop his shoulder when he feints, but it's a good bonus to add, so it's just something to be aware of. So I'll play the clip right now. Alright, let's reverse that. Okay, so this is the part I really want to focus on. So you can kind of see actually me grabbing that hip over there, just to make sure I'm doing it. So you can see, like before, my shoulder is definitely a lot further down. Just adds a bit more of deception to the defender. And you can kind of see the foot distance to the ball. It's a lot closer than I was before. And then as I continue the frames, you know, it's a lot more direct. A little bit of a semicircle, but maybe something you can work on, but you kind of see the overall momentum is more head-on.